At Christmas dinner, I heard my daughter say, "Having my mom live with me is like carrying an old heavy suitcase." The next day, she got a notification from the bank. I had canceled the house loan. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought a Christmas dinner would be the moment my heart would shatter into a million pieces. At 62, I'd weathered many storms in my life, but nothing prepared me for hearing my own daughter Bella describe me as an old heavy suitcase she had to carry around. The dining room was beautifully decorated. I'd spent the entire morning arranging the pine garlands, polishing the silver that had belonged to my mother, and preparing the turkey just the way Bella liked it. My hands were sore from all the chopping and mixing, but I didn't mind. This was our first Christmas in her new house, the house I had helped make possible. I was carrying a tray of cranberry sauce from the kitchen when I heard laughter from the dining room. Bella's voice carried clearly through the doorway. "Living with my mom is exhausting," she said, her voice slightly slurred from the third glass of wine. "It's like carrying around an old heavy suitcase that you can't put down." Her friends laughed. I froze, the tray suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds in my trembling hands. "I mean, I had no choice," Bella continued. "She sold her house to help with our mortgage, so now I'm stuck with her." "That's rough," one of her friends responded. "My mom wanted to move in after my dad died, but I told her absolutely not. I need my space." "Smart," Bella replied. "I should have done the same. I don't remember setting the tray down. I don't remember walking back to the kitchen. I only remember the icy numbness spreading through my chest as I gripped the counter, trying to breathe. A year ago, I had sold my modest but beloved home of 30 years. The home where I'd raised Bella as a single mother after her father died when she was just 7. The home where I'd worked late into the night grading papers as an elementary school teacher, making sure we had enough to live on and save for Bella's college fund. When Bella and her husband found their dream home but couldn't qualify for the full mortgage, I didn't hesitate. I sold my house, gave them the money for a substantial down payment, and moved in with them. The agreement was clear. I would have a place to live, and they would have a more manageable mortgage in my name since my credit score was excellent. "Mom? Where's the cranberry sauce?" Bella appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face flushed from wine and laughter. I straightened my shoulders and turned to face her. "It's ready," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'll bring it out." "Are you okay?" she asked, noticing something in my expression. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied, picking up the tray again. "Just a little tired." The rest of dinner passed in a blur. I smiled, served food, and made small talk while something inside me crumbled. With each bite I couldn't taste, with each forced laugh, I kept hearing those words over and over. An old heavy suitcase. After everyone left, I mechanically cleaned the kitchen while Bella and her husband lounged in the living room, too tipsy and satisfied to help. This wasn't unusual. Since moving in, I'd gradually taken on more household responsibilities, cooking, cleaning, even tending to their yard. I told myself I was being helpful, contributing to the household since I wasn't paying rent. But that night, as I scrubbed dishes until my fingers wrinkled, I realized the truth. I wasn't a cherished mother who had sacrificed everything for her daughter. I was a burden, a convenience when they needed money or free labor, but otherwise just an old heavy suitcase taking up space. I went to my room, the smallest bedroom that Bella had reluctantly given me instead of using as her home office as originally planned. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I stared at the framed photo of Bella on her college graduation day. How proud I had been, watching her accept her diploma, knowing every extra shift I'd taken had been worth it. Now I wondered if she had ever truly appreciated any of it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, my mind racing with memories and painful realizations. By morning I had made my decision. The bank notification would arrive on Bella's phone tomorrow. I would cancel the mortgage that was in my name. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally recognizing my own worth. The morning after Christmas, I sat at the small desk in my bedroom, a cup of tea cooling beside me as I stared at my laptop screen. My finger hovered over the submit button on the bank's website. One click and I would begin the process of canceling the mortgage in my name, the mortgage that had allowed Bella to live in her dream home. My mind drifted back to a spring day 25 years ago. Bella had been running a fever of 103, her small body burning up as I held her. I'd already used all my sick days at the elementary school where I taught, but there was no question about staying home with her. That decision cost me a week's pay and a stern warning from the principal. We ate macaroni and cheese for dinner every night for 2 weeks afterward, but Bella got better. That's what mattered. Then there was her college tuition. I'd saved diligently for years, but it wasn't enough for the private university she had her heart set on. Rather than disappoint her, I took out a second mortgage on our house and picked up weekend tutoring jobs. For 4 years I worked 7 days a week. My social life disappeared. Dating? Out of the question. My focus was singular, giving Bella the opportunities one never had. "You're the best mom ever," she'd said at her graduation, hugging me tight as we posed for photos. I'd felt such pride that day, such vindication for all the sacrifices. When Bella got married 5 years ago, I spent my entire retirement savings on her wedding. She'd wanted a grand affair at a historic mansion with 200 guests, a 5-course dinner, and a designer dress. Her father had been gone for 20 years by then. No one to share the financial burden. "It's my special day, Mom," she'd said when I gently suggested scaling back. "Don't you want me to have the wedding of my dreams?" Of course I did. So I signed the checks one after another, watching my carefully built security net unravel. Bella had been radiant that day. Looking at her glowing face as she danced with her new husband, I told myself it was worth it. A year later, when her marriage hit its first rough patch, she showed up at my doorstep, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I need space to think," she'd sobbed. "Can I stay with you for a while?" She stayed for 3 months. I cooked her favorite meals, listened to her vent for hours, and even paid for her therapy sessions. When she finally reconciled with her husband, she hugged me and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom." Those words had warmed my heart then. Now they felt hollow. The most recent sacrifice had been my house. When Bella and her husband found the spacious colonial they wanted to buy, their excitement was palpable. But their finances didn't quite stretch far enough for the down payment they needed. "We'll lose it if we don't act fast," Bella had said over dinner at my place. "The sellers have another offer." I looked around my modest but comfortable home. The garden I'd tended for decades. The kitchen where I'd taught Bella to bake cookies. The living room where we'd had Christmas mornings and movie nights. "What if I sell my house?" I offered, the words out before I'd fully considered them. "I could give you the money for the down payment and move in with you. You have that extra bedroom." Bella's face had lit up. "Mom, would you really do that? That would be amazing." Her husband had nodded enthusiastically. "We'd love to have you, Connie. And it would only be temporary, until we can refinance and pay you back." That was a year ago. I sold my house for $320,000, gave them $250,000 for the down payment, and used the rest to pay off my car and some minor debts. The mortgage was put in my name because of my excellent credit score. The plan was for them to refinance within a year and put the house in their names. But as the months passed, I noticed a change. Bella became irritated when I used too much hot water for my showers. She complained when I watched TV in the living room past 9. She criticized how I loaded the dishwasher, folded the laundry, even how I spoke to her friends. The temporary arrangement of me staying in their guest room began to feel increasingly permanent and increasingly unwelcome. Yet whenever I mentioned the refinancing plan, there was always an excuse. Her husband's commission wasn't as high as expected this quarter. They had unexpected car repairs. They wanted to renovate the kitchen first. Meanwhile, I had quietly taken on more responsibilities. I cleaned the house, prepared meals, tended the garden, and even watched their dog when they went on weekend trips. I told myself I was being helpful, contributing to the household since I wasn't paying rent. But after hearing Bella's old heavy suitcase comment, everything changed. I realized I wasn't valued as a mother who had sacrificed everything for her daughter. I was a convenience, an ATM, a housekeeper, and now a burden. I took a deep breath and clicked Submit on the bank's website. A confirmation message appeared. Your request to initiate cancellation of mortgage loan number 78294355 has been received. There was no turning back now. By tomorrow, Bella would receive notification from the bank. I had no idea how she would react, but for the first time in decades I was putting myself first. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was firm. I wasn't just canceling a mortgage, I was canceling a lifetime of being taken for granted. The day after submitting my request to the bank, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. For the first time in months, I hadn't spent the night tossing and turning, worrying about whether I was folding the towels correctly or using too much electricity. I'd made my decision, and there was a certain peace in that. I got up early as usual and made coffee, savoring the quiet of the house before Bella and her husband woke up. Outside, a light snow had fallen overnight, covering the backyard in white. I remembered how Bella used to beg me to go outside at the first snow when she was little, how we'd make snow angels together before school. Where had that loving daughter gone? When had she started seeing me as nothing but a burden? My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret, my best friend from my teaching days. She was the only person I'd confided in about Bella's comment. "How are you holding up?" she'd written. "I did it," I texted back. "Cancelled the mortgage." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "I'm proud of you, Connie. Want to meet for coffee later?" I hesitated. Normally, I would check with Bella first to make sure she didn't need me for anything. But not today. "Yes," I replied. "The cafe on Oak Street at 11? Perfect. See you there." I heard movement upstairs. Bella would be down soon, expecting breakfast as she did every morning. Part of me wanted to let her fend for herself today, but old habits die hard. I started making her favorite avocado toast, wondering if this would be the last time. As I sliced the avocado, I thought about what would happen next. The bank would send Bella a notification about the mortgage cancellation. She would be shocked, probably furious. There would be a confrontation. And then what? I couldn't stay here, that much was clear. But where would I go? I'd given up my home, and housing prices had risen so much in the past year that buying a new place with what little I had left seemed impossible. Renting then. But even that would be challenging on my teacher's pension. I had some savings, the $70,000 I hadn't given to Bella from the house sale, but I'd been hoping to preserve that for emergencies. "Morning, Mom." Bella breezed into the kitchen in her silk robe, hair perfectly tousled even first thing in the morning. "Is the coffee ready?" "Good morning," I replied, pouring her a cup. "Sleep well?" "Not really." Mark was snoring again. She took the coffee and the plate of avocado toast I handed her. "Thanks." "No, how did you sleep?" No acknowledgement that I'd been up for an hour preparing her breakfast. "Just thanks, the bare minimum of politeness you'd offer a server at a restaurant." "I'm meeting Margaret for coffee at 11, I said, testing the waters of my new independence. Bella frowned slightly. "Today? I was hoping you could help me take down the Christmas decorations. And the dishwasher needs to be emptied." Before yesterday, I would have immediately canceled with Margaret. I would have spent my day on a stepladder, carefully wrapping ornaments while Bella directed from the couch, scrolling through her phone. "The decorations can wait," I said, my voice steady. "And Mark can empty the dishwasher when he gets up." Her eyebrows shot up. "Are you okay? You seem different." "I'm fine," I said, turning to rinse my coffee cup. "Just making plans for myself." She studied me for a moment, then shrugged and went back to her toast. "Whatever. Just be back by 3. We're having the Millers over for drinks, and I need you to make those spinach puffs they liked last time." I didn't respond. By 3, she might have already received the bank notification. The Millers would probably be the last thing on her mind. After breakfast, I retreated to my room and opened my laptop again. Time to be practical. I searched for apartment rentals in the area, wincing at the prices. Even a modest 1-bedroom would eat up a significant portion of my monthly pension. I expanded my search to neighboring towns. There were more affordable options farther from the city center, but that would mean being even more isolated. At my age, starting over somewhere new was daunting. My phone buzzed again. Margaret again. "I've been thinking. My sister moved to assisted living last month. Her condo is sitting empty while she decides whether to sell. Maybe you could rent it for a while." A spark of hope flared in my chest. Margaret's sister had lived, in a pleasant retirement community about 20 minutes away. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe and had a small garden area. And it would be temporary, giving me time to figure out my next move. "That might be perfect," I wrote back. "Can we discuss it when we meet?" "Absolutely." I looked around the small bedroom that had been my home for the past year. There wasn't much I'd need to take. My furniture had all been sold with my house. These furnishings belonged to Bella. I had my clothes, some books, photo albums, and a few cherished keepsakes. Everything I truly owned could probably fit in my car. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. I heard Bella's phone ring in the kitchen, followed by her footsteps as she took the call in the living room. Her voice rose in confusion, then shock. "What do you mean, cancellation notice? There must be some mistake." It had begun. My heart hammered in my chest, but my resolve didn't waver. It was time for Bella to learn that treating people like disposable conveniences had consequences. It was time for me to remember my own worth. I straightened my shoulders and began to prepare for what would come next. I heard Bella's rapid footsteps coming up the stairs before she burst into my room without knocking. Her face was flushed, her eyes wild with panic and anger. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" She thrust her phone in my face, showing the bank notification. "The bank says you're canceling the mortgage. There has to be some mistake." I remained seated at my small desk, hands folded in my lap. Despite my racing heart, I kept my voice calm. "It's not a mistake, Bella. I've canceled the mortgage." Her jaw dropped and for a moment she was speechless. Then her shock morphed into rage. "You what? How could you do this? Are you insane?" She paced the small room, hands gesturing wildly. "Do you have any idea what this means? We could lose the house." "I'm aware of what it means," I said quietly. Bella stopped pacing and stared at me, really looking at me perhaps for the first time in months. "Why?" she demanded. "Why would you do this to us?" "To you," I repeated, a hint of bitter amusement in my voice. "That's the question you're asking? Not what you've done to me. What are you talking about? We gave you a place to live. After I gave you $250,000 for the down payment on this house," I reminded her. "After I sold my home to help you get yours." "That was your choice," she shot back. "Nobody forced you to do that." "You're right. It was my choice. Just like it's my choice now to cancel a mortgage that's in my name." Her face contorted with disbelief. "Is this about money? Do you want us to pay you rent or something? Fine, we can work something out, but this..." She waved her phone. "This is extreme." I stood up slowly, feeling oddly powerful despite being several inches shorter than my daughter. "It's not about money, Bella. It's about respect. Something I haven't received since the day I moved in." "What are you talking about? We've been nothing but accommodating." A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Accommodating? You've treated me like an unpaid housekeeper. Like a burden. An old heavy suitcase you have to carry around." Her face went pale. "What? I heard you at Christmas dinner, telling your friends how exhausting it is to live with me. How you're stuck with me because I sold my house." Bella's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Then weakly, "I was just venting. I didn't mean." "You meant it," I cut in. "And it wasn't just words, Bella. It's been your attitude since I moved in. The constant criticism, the eye-rolling, the way you talk to me like I'm a child or a servant." "That's not fair," she protested, but there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes. "Isn't it? When was the last time you asked how I was doing? When was the last time you thanked me for cooking your meals, cleaning your house, tending your garden? When was the last time you treated me like your mother instead of an inconvenience?" Bella crossed her arms defensively. "You're overreacting." So I made one stupid comment after too much wine. "That doesn't justify this." It wasn't just one comment. It was the last in a long line of disrespect. I took a deep breath. And it made me realize something important. I deserve better. "So what now?" she demanded. "You're just going to leave us homeless to teach me a lesson?" "You won't be homeless. You and Mark have good jobs. You can qualify for a mortgage on your own, though perhaps not for a house this expensive. Or you can sell and find something within your means. This is our dream home." "Dreams change," I said simply. "Mine certainly have." Her eyes narrowed. "Where will you go? You don't have a home anymore." There was a hint of smugness in her voice, as if she thought she had me cornered. As if she believed I had nowhere to turn and would have to back down. "I've made arrangements," I said, not elaborating further. "I'll be moving out by the end of the week." This is ridiculous, she scoffed. You're 62 years old. You're really going to start over because of one comment? No, Bella. I'm starting over because I finally realized my worth. Something you seem to have forgotten. The door downstairs opened and closed. Mark was home. Bella's eyes darted to the hallway, then back to me. Mark is going to freak out, she hissed. You have no idea what you've done. Bella. Mark's voice called from downstairs. What's going on? I got a weird email from the bank. We'll talk about this later, Bella whispered urgently to me. Don't say anything to Mark yet. We can figure this out. She hurried out, closing my door behind her. I could hear her rapid footsteps on the stairs, followed by hushed, intense conversation. Then Mark's voice rose, no longer hushed. She did what? More urgent whispering from Bella. Then footsteps coming back up the stairs, heavier this time. A sharp knock on my door. Connie, can we talk? Mark's voice was strained but controlled. I opened the door to find both of them standing there. Bella slightly behind Mark, her expression a mix of anger and apprehension. Of course, I said, stepping aside to let them enter. Mark looked uncomfortable in the small room, like a principal called to discipline a student. He cleared his throat. Bella tells me there's been some misunderstanding about the mortgage. There's no misunderstanding, I replied. I've canceled it. He exchanged a look with Bella. Okay, but why? If there's a problem, we should have discussed it first. I appreciated that he at least asked why, which was more than Bella had initially done. I heard Bella at Christmas dinner describing me as a burden, an old heavy suitcase she has to carry around. It made me realize how things stand in this house. Mark's eyes widened and he turned to Bella. You said that. Bella flushed. I was just joking around with friends. I didn't mean anything by it. But you said it, Mark pressed, looking troubled. It doesn't matter what I said. The point is, Mom is trying to ruin us over a stupid comment. Mark ran a hand through his hair, clearly stressed. Connie, I had no idea Bella said that. It was thoughtless and cruel. But canceling the mortgage affects all of us. Couldn't we have talked about this first? His reasonable tone almost made me waver. Almost. I've made my decision, I said firmly. It's time for me to move on, and for you both to stand on your own feet. They both stared at me, clearly not having expected this level of resolve from the woman who had always put their needs first. This conversation isn't over, Bella said tightly, grabbing Mark's arm. Come on, we need to call the bank. As they left, I heard Mark ask quietly, What else have you been saying about your mother? I closed the door and sat down on my bed, emotionally drained but somehow lighter than I'd felt in years. The confrontation I'd feared was over, and I was still standing. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Condo keys are ready whenever you are. I looked around the room one last time. It was time to pack. The condo was smaller than I expected, but as I stood in the center of the living room with sunlight streaming through the sliding glass doors, it felt like freedom. Margaret's sister had left most of her furniture when she moved to assisted living, so the place didn't feel empty, just new. Unfamiliar. Mine. It's not much, Margaret said apologetically, setting down the last of the boxes we'd carried in from my car. But it's yours for as long as you need it. Jean doesn't plan to sell for at least a year. It's perfect, I told her, running my hand along the back of a floral-patterned couch. More than perfect. The past 3 days had been a blur. After the confrontation with Bella and Mark, the house had become a battlefield of cold silences and slammed doors. Bella alternated between ignoring me completely and making barbed comments about betrayal and ingratitude. Mark, to his credit, had tried to mediate, suggesting family counseling or at least a calmer discussion about the situation. But I was done talking. For too long, my words had fallen on deaf ears. Now I was letting my actions speak. I'd packed my belongings methodically, surprised by how little I actually owned. Clothes, books, photo albums, a few kitchen items I bought myself since moving in with Bella. Everything fit into my car in one trip. The hardest part had been deciding which photos to take. I left behind the ones where Bella's smile seemed forced, keeping only those from her childhood and a few from her college years, before money and status became her primary concerns. Perhaps it was sentimental of me, But I wanted to remember the daughter I'd raised, not the woman who saw me as a burden. When I'd finally announced I was leaving, Bella had been in the middle of a phone call with the bank, trying desperately to salvage the mortgage situation. "You're really doing this?" she'd asked, covering the phone's mouthpiece. "You're just walking out?" "I'm moving on," I'd corrected her. "There's a difference. Where will you even go?" Her tone suggested she thought I was bluffing. "I've found a place." Her eyes had widened slightly. She hadn't expected that. "This is insane. You're throwing away everything over one stupid comment." I'd simply shaken my head. "Goodbye, Bella. I hope someday you understand." Now, as Margaret and I unpacked my meager belongings, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Sadness, certainly. What mother wouldn't grieve the relationship I'd had with my daughter? But also relief, pride, a tentative hope. "You know," Margaret said, placing a framed photo of young Bella on the mantel, "I wasn't sure you'd go through with it. You've always put Bella first, even when she didn't deserve it." "That was the problem," I sighed, organizing my books on an empty shelf. "I forgot about putting myself first sometimes." Margaret squeezed my shoulder. "Well, you're doing it now. Better late than never." After we finished unpacking, Margaret left for a dinner engagement, promising to check on me tomorrow. I found myself alone in my new home as evening fell, casting long shadows across the unfamiliar floor. The silence was different from the tense quiet of Bella's house. There, silence had been heavy with unspoken resentments and expectations. Here it was just peaceful. I made myself a simple dinner from groceries Margaret had thoughtfully stocked in the refrigerator. As I ate at the small dining table, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd sat down to eat without jumping up multiple times to fetch something for Bella or Mark. My phone remained silent. No frantic calls or texts from Bella demanding I reconsider. I wasn't surprised. Her pride would keep her from reaching out, at least for now. And honestly, I needed this time apart as much as she did. After dinner, I explored the community grounds. The retirement complex was modest but well-maintained, with small gardens between buildings and a community center at its heart. A few residents nodded hello as I passed. One elderly gentleman walking his miniature poodle stopped to introduce himself. "You must be Jean's sister," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Walter from 3B. "Connie," I replied, shaking his hand. "Actually, I'm Jean's sister's friend. I'm renting her place while she's in assisted living." "Ah," he nodded. "Well, welcome anyway. We have bridge on Tuesdays and movie night on Fridays, if you're interested." I thanked him, surprised by how such a simple interaction lifted my spirits. When was the last time I'd made a new acquaintance? Living with Bella, my social circle had shrunk to almost nothing. I'd been too busy catering to her needs to maintain my own friendships, let alone form new ones. Back in the condo, I ran a bath in the small but clean bathroom. Soaking in the warm water, I allowed myself to really feel the enormity of what I'd done. I'd walked away from my daughter. I'd forced her to face consequences perhaps for the first time in her adult life. I'd chosen my own dignity over maintaining a toxic relationship. The realization brought tears finally. Not tears of regret but of release. Years of swallowed hurt, of smiling through disrespect, of making excuses for Bella's behavior. All of it washed away with those tears. By the time I emerged from the bath, I felt lighter. Cleansed not just physically but emotionally. I put on my old flannel pajamas, the ones Bella had mocked as grandmotherly, and settled into the unfamiliar bed. As I drifted toward sleep, my thoughts turned not to what I'd left behind, but to what might lie ahead. For the first time in years, I had no one's expectations to meet but my own. No one's schedule to accommodate but mine. No one's dreams to prioritize above my own long-forgotten aspirations. Tomorrow I decided I would inquire about art classes at the community center. I'd always wanted to learn watercolor painting but never found the time. Maybe I'd join that bridge club Walter mentioned, or finally read those classic novels gathering dust on my shelves. 62 wasn't too old to start again. It wasn't too old to discover who Connie Miller could be when she wasn't defined solely as Bella's mother or Mark's mother-in-law or the convenient housekeeper. My eyelids grew heavy, and just before sleep claimed me, I realized what that unfamiliar feeling was that had been growing inside me all day. It was freedom. 3 months passed more quickly than I could have imagined. Spring arrived, bringing new blooms to the small garden outside my condo. I'd planted tulips and daffodils, enjoying the simple pleasure of watching something grow under my care. Inside, my temporary home had become truly mine. Watercolor paintings, some quite good, others delightfully amateur, hung on the walls. Books lined the shelves, many with bookmarks showing my progress through reading lists I dreamed of tackling for years. Photos of my new friends from the community center stood in frames beside the old ones of Bella and me. I'd heard from Mark twice since I left. The first call came 2 weeks after I moved out, asking practical questions about the mortgage and inquiring awkwardly about my well-being. The second came a month later, more relaxed, almost friendly. They had put the house on the market, he told me. They'd found a smaller place they could afford on their own. Bella misses you, he'd said toward the end of the call. She won't admit it, but she does. I'd simply thanked him for letting me know, not ready to reach out just yet. My healing wasn't complete. The wound Bella had inflicted wasn't just about that Christmas dinner comment. It was about years of being taken for granted, of giving everything and receiving little in return. But I thought about her every day. Wondered if she ever reflected on our relationship the way I had been doing in my watercolor classes and during long walks around the community lake. Wondered if she missed me as a mother or just as a convenient helper. On a Wednesday morning in late April, as I was returning from the community center with a fresh canvas under my arm, I spotted a familiar car in the visitors' parking lot. My heart skipped a beat. Bella's blue sedan, the one I'd helped her pick out 3 years ago. She was sitting on the bench near my front door, looking smaller somehow, less polished than I remembered. Her designer handbag was missing, replaced by a practical tote. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She stood when she saw me approaching, shifting her weight from foot to foot, a nervous gesture from childhood that I hadn't seen in years. "Mom," she said, her voice catching slightly. "Bella." I stopped a few feet away, studying her face. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. "This is a surprise. Can we talk?" she asked. "Inside, maybe?" I nodded, unlocking my door and leading her into my home. She looked around, taking in the changes I'd made, the art on the walls, the books everywhere. "It's nice," she said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Cozy. Thank you. Would you like some tea?" "Please." The familiar routine of putting on the kettle and arranging cookies on a plate gave me time to calm my racing heart. I'd imagined this moment countless times over the past months, rehearsed what I might say. Now that it was happening, all those practice speeches evaporated. We sat at my small dining table, the tea steaming between us. Bella wrapped her hands around her mug but didn't drink. "We sold the house," she said finally. "Got less than we hoped, but enough to pay off the bank and put a down payment on a smaller place. Mark mentioned that. I'm glad it worked out." She nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "It's actually better for us. The mortgage payments are manageable now, and it's closer to both our jobs." A silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words. Finally, Bella took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Mom." The words hung in the air, fragile as blown glass. I waited, giving her space to continue. "What I said at Christmas. It was cruel and ungrateful. And it wasn't just that night. I've been treating you badly for a long time." She looked up, her eyes glistening. "I didn't realize how much until you were gone." "It hurt," I acknowledged quietly. "Not just the words, but feeling like I was nothing more than a convenience to you." "You were never that," she insisted, a tear spilling down her cheek. I got so caught up in wanting the perfect life, the perfect house, the perfect everything. I started seeing people as either helping or hindering that image. Including your own mother." She nodded, ashamed. "The past few months have been a wake-up call. Having to actually clean my own house, cook my own meals. I realized how much I'd been taking advantage of you. It wasn't about the housework, Bella. I know that now. It was about respect. About appreciating what you've always done for me." She wiped away another tear. "The thing is, when I was packing up to move, I found all these boxes in the attic. My school projects you'd saved, scrapbooks you'd made of every little achievement, letters you wrote me when I was at summer camp." She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a worn envelope. "This one especially. You wrote it the night before my first day of college." I remembered that letter. I'd stayed up until 3 in the morning pouring my heart out, telling Bella how proud I was, how much I believed in her, how much I would miss her but how excited I was for her future. You wrote that your greatest wish was for me to be kind and to value the people who truly loved me. Bella's voice broke. I failed at that, didn't I? The question hung between us, heavy with regret. I reached across the table and took her hand. We all fail sometimes, Bella. The question is whether we learn from it. I want to, she said earnestly. I've been in therapy since you left, trying to understand why I became so materialistic, so focused on appearances. That surprised me. Bella had always scoffed at therapy, calling it a waste of money. It's helping, she continued. I'm starting to see patterns. How I equated expensive things with being loved. How I pushed away people who didn't fit my idea of success. Including me, I said softly. She nodded, fresh tears falling. Especially you. The person who's loved me most consistently in my entire life. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling between us. It wasn't a complete healing, that would take time, but it was a beginning. I miss you, Mom, she said finally. I miss who we used to be before I got so caught up in having the perfect life. I've missed you too, I admitted. The real you, not the person you were trying to become. Bella glanced around my condo again, taking in the evidence of my new life. You seem happy here. I am, I said, surprised to realize how true it was. I've discovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed, or maybe never knew were there. So where does that leave us? She asked hesitantly. It was the question I'd been asking myself since seeing her car in the parking lot. The answer came more easily than I expected. We start again, I said. Slowly. On equal footing. No more taking advantage, no more disrespect. I'd like that, she whispered. And I stay here, I added firmly. This is my home now. I'm not going back to being your housekeeper or your ATM. She flinched slightly at the directness but nodded. That's fair. More than fair. We talked for another hour, tentatively rebuilding bridges that had seemed irreparably broken. When Bella finally stood to leave, she looked lighter somehow. Dinner next week? She suggested. At our new place? I'll cook, she added quickly. Or try to anyway. I smiled. I'd like that. At the door she hesitated, then wrapped her arms around me in a hug that felt more genuine than any we'd shared in years. I love you, Mom, she whispered. The real you, not just what you can do for me. I love you too, I replied. Always have, always will. As I watched her drive away, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect. Old habits don't vanish overnight, and trust takes time to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about my relationship with my daughter. I turned back to my condo, my home, with a smile. The old, heavy suitcase had been put down at last, not discarded but unpacked. Its contents, the accumulated wisdom and strength of 62 years, were finally being appreciated. By Bella, yes, but more importantly by me.